Hi everyone and welcome back to Fully Playable Games. So on today's video we are going to be doing another rankings video, and in the last video that we done we ranked all of the Nintendo consoles. So today it is only fair that we are going to be looking at all of the Sega consoles. Now I do have to admit I am a bit of a Sega fanboy. I grew up with the Mega Drive and yeah, I'm going to try and not be biased on this. So we are going to be going from the very first console right the way through to the very last. So starting with the SG-1000 and we're going to finish with the Dreamcast. So let's get switched over to the PC screen and then we can have a look at what the rankings are going to be. So as you can see, I have got the tier list all set up and ready to go. So the first console that we're going to look at is the SG-1000. It originally sold 400,000 units in Japan and has a game library of 75 games. Now for me, it is a console that I'm desperate to get in the collection. I think out of all of the Sega consoles, there's only two really that I want for the collection. They're both on this list. The SG-1000 is one that I want for the collection just purely because it is the first. So it was the first Sega console ever released. Unfortunately, it was only released in Japan, which is a bit of a negative, but that's just how it goes sometimes. For me, the fact that it was only released in Japan, the other thing that I don't like about it is it's using the joystick controller. They're all built in. So I think for me, the SG-1000 is going to get a C ranking. Just because there are a couple of things that I don't like about it. But, yeah, I think that's probably the best place to put it. Next up, we have got the SG-1000 Mk2. So this was essentially the predecessor to the Master System. Sales numbers are a bit foggy for these ones. So when I'm looking online, I am finding sales figures for the SG-1000 range at 1.4 million with 400,000 for the SG-1000. So what I have done is I've just split the remaining million between the Mark II and the Mark III. Just like the SG-1000, they both had 75 games as well. The plus that I think for the Mark II, and actually we've got one just there. So we do, I don't know if you can see it, actually, no, it's kind of cut off. So I've got one just on the shelf behind me. Unfortunately, I don't have the controller with it, so it isn't complete, but I do have one in the collection. For me, this one was a step up from the original SG-1000. Straight off the bat, it has got more of a familiar controller. So it takes on the same shape as the Master System controller. Also, those controllers are detachable as well. So for me, that really gives it some positive features. But as I've said before, it has a very small game library, only 75 games. And we've got sales figures attributed to this of 500,000. So for me, the better controller and the removable controller are going to grant it a B ranking. And then finally, for the SG-1000 range, we're going to move on to the Mark III. So once again, the Mark III sold 500,000. I'm going to put that in quotes. And has a game library of 75. But the big thing for me with the SG-1000 Mark III is essentially it is the Japanese version of the Master System. So what actually happened was this was released originally in Japan. Then the Master System come to the West. And essentially all it was a repackaged SG-1000 Mark III. It has the card port on the front, cartridge slot on the front. I'm not too sure whether it has the AV output, but yeah, in all essential purposes, it is a Master System. So the way that I look at it is without the SG-1000 Mark III, we wouldn't actually have a Master System. So for me, I am going to grant this an A rank because, yeah, I just think the way that Sega took the initial SG-1000 and evolved it over the years, as you can see, we've gone from CBA, and I think that's justified. But next up, we are going to move on to the first Western console by Sega, and that is the Master System. So this is going to be the original Mark I Master System. It sold 18 million units. 8 of them were actually sold in Brazil. So Brazil was actually a massive, massive market for Sega. I think it went Brazil, Europe, Japan, US. I think is how the rankings work with regards to sales figures for the Master System. The game library had around 360 games released on it. That's across all regions. And yeah, I have to say, I didn't grow up with a Master System. I had a couple of friends that had them, and I would admit, any time I had the chance to play them, I would always jump on it. So for me, I think the Mark I Master System is going to get a ranking, because essentially it is a SG-1000 Mk3. So there's no real reason to give them different rankings. But then we move on to the Master System Mark II, and this is where things do change, because obviously the Mark II was released as a cheaper alternative to the Mark I, and it removed, in my eyes, it removed probably one of the key features of the Mark I, and that was the AV port. So the Mark II is just RF only, and yeah, for me, I just think that is just it's a massive downgrade, and I think with that, it is going to get a lower ranking. So I'm going to give this a B ranking. With regards to sort of sales figures and games, obviously that is everything's bundled in with the Mark I. So yeah, it's difficult to find sort of differing figures for the Master System. So yeah, with the Master System, I am going to give that a B ranking. Just because the main reason for that is purely because it didn't have the AV output, and I think the fact that you had it on the Master System, they then took it away for the they had it for the Mark I, sorry, took it away for the Mark II. I just think it was just too much of a downgrade. Then we get on to essentially my childhood in a nutshell, the Mega Drive. So first off, we're going to look at the Mark I Mega Drive, and this is the console that I still to this day remember getting for Christmas, running around the house absolutely over the moon for getting this for Christmas. And then a couple of weeks later, we actually so we went to Scotland. So I've got family up in Scotland, and we were actually travelling up to Scotland to see them for New Year. And yeah, initially when the car was all loaded up, we were ready to go, I had the sort of hard carry case for my Mega Drive, come down with it, all happy and jovial, to be told there's no more room left in the car, we can't get it in. And I was devastated. Luckily, we did manage to get it in eventually. And what I'd done was when we got up to my aunt's, I sequestered myself off in a bedroom and just spent the whole time playing Sonic. Absolutely love it. I have got such amazing memories of the Mega Drive. And as you can tell, there isn't any other rank that I'm going to give this bar one. So the Mega Drive itself sold nearly 31 million units. So 30 million, or 30.75 million. It's got a game library of 879 games. I will admit, I would love to have a power set of the Mega Drive. It is, as I say, it's my childhood console, so I absolutely love it. So with that, I am just going to come out and say it. I'm going to give the Mega Drive an S rank straight off the bat. It is, for me, it's a console, even to this day, that I still love. The Mega Drive that I use, that I've got on the shelf behind me, is the same Mega Drive that I got on that Christmas day that I took up to Scotland And yeah, it is the exact same Mega Drive, and I absolutely over the moon that I've still got it. And I'll be honest, I've still got all the games as well. I've never traded or got rid of any of my Mega Drive games. So the copy of Sonic, the original copy of Sonic that I've got up on the shelf there, is the original copy that come with my Mega Drive. And yeah, I will admit, out of every section of the games room, the Mega Drive is one that I probably look at the most. So yeah, really, really happy with that. And yeah, absolutely love my Sega Mega Drive. But moving on, we've also got the younger brother, I'm probably going to say, to the Mega Drive, and that's the Mega Drive 2. Now, for me, I never had a Mega Drive 2. I had a friend that had one, but yeah, I still, even to this day, I still love the Mark 1. For me, yeah, I just never had a connection with the Mega Drive 2. But I think for me, the thing that I don't like about the Mega Drive 2 is the fact that it has a proprietary connection on it. So you've got one video output on it, and it is basically, it's proprietary, but it works across both RF and AV. Whereas the Mega Drive, the Mark 1, had a dedicated RF port and a dedicated AV port. So, yeah, I think from my perspective, because I've not got the connection with the Mega Drive 2, and the fact that you basically only have this one cable that you can use, whereas like with the Mega Drive, for example, if I've got the normal Sega RF cable, brilliant, I can play the console. If I've got just some random RF cable that's sitting around, I can still use it. Whereas with the Mega Drive 2, unless you've got that specific cable that fits that port, you're not going to be able to play your console. And I've actually met a couple of people over the years that weren't able to play their Mega Drive 2. So like I would go around to friends' houses and they would say, I'd like, oh, can we jump on the Mega Drive? No, I can't find the aerial cable. So for me, the Mark II, equally, it is still an amazing console. Is going to get an A ranking just for that proprietary part. I just, yeah, it's a bit of a letdown. But I, once again, see what they were doing it. They basically made the system smaller, so there has to be some sacrifices. Right, next up, we have got the Sega Pico. So I do have one of these in the collection as well. I was really lucky to find one at a boot fair. Super cheap. I think I paid £5 for it, got it home, and it just works perfectly. So this was Sega's entry, should we say, into the sort of edutainment market. So it's a console that is specifically designed for children. It was absolutely massive in Japan. I think the consoles were being produced up to sort of like the mid to late 2000s. I think it's around 2007. I think they stopped producing the Sega Pico over in Japan. Over in the West, it didn't fare so good. Yes, so it only sold 3.2 million units, but that is going to be across sort of Western and Japan markets. I had a total of 256 games released for it, which I was really surprised at. Once again, I think the majority of those games were released in the Japanese market. But what made the games library on this so unique was it actually had a Pokemon game on it. And it is a game that I want to try and get hold of, but it is super expensive because it was Japanese only. And yeah, just to see a Pokemon game on a Sega console is absolutely amazing. The connection for the Mega Drive, for the Pico, uses the same connections as the, I believe it's the Mega Drive 2. So it uses the same AV out and the same power supply. It's either the Mega Drive 2 or the Mega Drive 1. I can't remember off the top of my head. But for me, as I say, it was predominantly designed for kids. So it's not something that I've spent too much time playing. I've had a bit of a go on it since picking one up for the collection. but yeah, it isn't a must-play console for me. So from that respect, it's gonna go in as a B rank. Yeah, no, I can't. I'm struggling with this one. I really am. No, I'm going to stick with B. I don't know. I'm in an iron between B and A on this one. Right? I'm going to stick with B, just because, yeah, it's not my cup of tea, as they say. But moving on to the next console, and this one definitely is my cup of tea. So this is the Mega CD Mark 1. So this is a console that I spent probably, well, it must have been about 30 years wanting to get hold of. And I think I've told the story before. I remember going out with my cousin up in London. We went into Comet in Croydon, and I had a big display with the Mega CD in there, and I was desperate to have one. But at that time, I had the Mega Drive, and my parents were like, "No, you've got a Mega Drive. You don't need another console." And yeah, they didn't understand the fact that sort of consoles get upgraded. So I think after the Mega Drive, the first console that I was actually able to get was the PS1, the slim, what I would call the PS1 Slim, and that was bought out of my own money. So yeah, I as a kid, as a teen, and as an adult, I always wanted a Mega CD. So when I really went heavy on collecting, that was one console that I had in my sights right from day one. I was lucky enough to actually get hold of a complete in-box version as well. So for me, it's another console that sits pride of place with my Mega Drive. They both sit on the shelving unit, and yeah, I absolutely love it. So the Mega CD sold 6 million units and has a total of 207 games released for it. For me, even though I speak so highly of the Mega CD, it isn't going to get an S rank. This is going to fit in quite nicely as an A rank, purely because the majority of the titles are FMV games. Now, I just think that they could have done so much more with the Mega CD. But yeah, between the combination of sort of 16-bit ports and FMV games, that speaks for probably 80% of the library. So for me, it is going to be an A rank. But as I say, it is a console I do still love. And whenever I do load it up to capture gameplay, I will just like set it up, turn it on, and just let the title screen play. I don't know why, I absolutely love the tune that they've got on there. So yeah, once again, another console I absolutely love. Then moving on to the Mega CD 2. So this was one that was designed to work with the Mega Drive 2, but you can also put the Mega Drive 1 on it. In the box, it does actually have an extension pad where you can sort of plug that into the side and then plug the Mega Drive 1 on the top. Once again, it isn't a console I've used too much because I don't really play the Mega Drive 2. I will just go straight to my Mega Drive 1. So yeah, for me, the Mega CD 2 is going to get a B rank. Once again, just because it isn't a console that I play too often. And then it's also got the same sort of negative points as the Mega CD 1. So yeah, I'm happy that that's a B. As I say, it's not a console that I use too much. I do have one in the collection. I've got one complete in box, as well as a complete in box Mega Drive 2 as well. And then we move on to the other console that I am desperate to add to the collection. And yeah, in addition to the SG-1000, this is probably the last sort of major Sega console that I want for the collection, and that is the Multi-Mega. So this is a all-in-one Mega Drive and Mega CD unit. It was also designed to be used as a portable CD player as well. Now, for me, it is an absolutely genius bit of kit. You think that when this was released, late 90s, I think this was probably, what, 96, 97, I think this come out. It is so far ahead. You think the size of this, and it's got a Mega CD and a Mega Drive, and you compare the Mega CD, which is quite a big unit, with the Mega Drive. Then you've got the Mega Drive 2, which is quite a long unit. And then they've just squashed that all down into this thing that can essentially fit in your pocket. Absolutely amazing, and just a testament to the ingenuity at Sega. And I think the other thing that really makes this stand out from the other two versions of the Mega CD is the fact that it doesn't require as much power. So with the other two versions of Mega CD, with the other two versions of Mega CD, they both need two power supplies. And obviously these are big bricks that can be an absolute pain to plug in. What Sega did do, because of that, they did actually release a multi-socket over in the US, but that was only released in the US. They didn't release a European version or a UK version. So, yeah, for me, I think the Multi-Mega in itself is a step up. The fact that it didn't need the two plugs. The problem with it is it only sold 25,000 units. So it is it is the lowest selling Sega console. There you go. I don't have to double check. Yeah, it's the lowest selling Sega console. The only other negative that I have with this as well is, unlike the other two versions of the Mega Drive, the Multi-Mega doesn't actually work with the 32X. So, yeah, it is limited in that respect, because, as I say, there is some Mega CD games that do require the 32X. So, yeah, I don't think that they're playable. I'm pretty sure it's not compatible with the 32X. I will check, and I'll put a little note down the bottom of the screen. So, for me, I was originally going to say this was a B rank, but I think because of the improvements that Sega made, and the fact that it was they being able to sort of shrink down the Mega CD bundle into such a small package, I think this deserves an A rank. As I say, I've never seen one in the flesh. I've never used one, but yeah, I think it deserves an A. Then next up, we get to the 32X. So this was for me. Yes, this is an add-on. It's not a console in itself. But the way that I look at it, I'm classing a console as anything that's got its own game library. So that's why we had the SG-1000s, and yeah, the 32X has its own game library. So I am going to include it. But for me, I just think it was ill-conceived. Yes, we got some good games on it, and we got some amazing improvements on those games. First one that I can think of off the top of the hat is Virtual Racing. So Virtual Racing on the 32X was a massive improvement over the Mega Drive version. As I say, the problem I have with the 32X is the fact that it was so ill-conceived and it was rushed out as a stopgap measure. So the 32X actually released the same day as the Sega Saturn in Japan. So over in Europe and the US, 32X come out. I think it released in the US first, and it actually released in the US the same day as the Sega Saturn. And yeah, it was just the unloved stepchild of Sega. Sega US were forced to release it, and it just wasn't, no one wanted it. So yeah, it is a bit of a shame. For me, it is going to get a B rank, just because, so it originally sold 800,000 units. It has a game library of only 40. So yeah, it definitely isn't, it doesn't deserve any sort of singing or dancing. it is something I've got in the collection. I will be honest, I can't actually remember the last time I played one, or played on the 32X. It is, yeah, I've still got the original 3 games that I got with it. I haven't even been able to pick up any new games for it. So, yeah, it's, I think for me, a B rank is a fair rank for that one. Then, next up, we move on to the Sega Saturn. Now, for me, with the Sega Saturn, I remember when it first came out, and I actually remember, and I don't know why I remember this. I was walking around, I think it was Gravesend Market, and I remember coming to a stall that sold video games, and they actually had a Sega Saturn on there. And I can't remember what they were charging for it, but it was well above anything that I could afford at the time. And yeah, it was just so underappreciated when it was released. I think, don't get me wrong, I 100% put the failure of the Saturn in Sega's lap. I think the way they marketed it, especially in the West, was shocking. It was absolutely disgraceful. Going to a conference and saying, yeah, we're releasing it today, and absolutely basically alienating all of the retailers around you, just was such a bad move. And yeah, I do think that it was massively mismanaged by Sega. That said, I do absolutely love the console. So I have got a whole stack of games for the Sega Saturn. It originally sold 9.26 million units with a game library of 1,028 games. Now, I will say probably 60% of those games were Japanese exclusives. They didn't come to the West. The console itself was absolutely massive in Japan. It sold absolutely, I think most of that 9.2 million units all come from Japan. It was massively supported out there, and then when it come over to the West, didn't get the same reception just because the marketing of it was handled so poorly, and yeah, just didn't get the support from other developers. But that being said, as I say, I do love my Sega Saturn. I've currently got a Japanese dev kit sitting on the shelf behind me. Not too sure whether it can be seen or not. And then I've got a Mark 1 and a Mark 2 Saturn as well in the collection. I absolutely love playing it. And any chance I get to play it is a happy day for me. So from my perspective, I am going to give the Sega Saturn an S rank. I think it was just highly underrated. Yeah, I think had it been marketed and managed a bit better by Sega, it would have done so much better in the West. And yeah, I purely put its failure down to mismanagement of Sega. And that leads us on to the last console, and that is going to be the Sega Dreamcast. So originally selling 9.13 million, it had a game library of 619 games. And this was one of the first consoles, and I think the only console from Sega that actually come bundled with a modem built into the console. The Mega Drive did have a modem add-on for it, but this was the first console that actually had it built into the unit. And Sega were really pushing the online play element. In addition to the normal broadband mode, the normal modem, the normal dial-up modem, sorry. It did also come with, you could also get a broadband modem where it would plug into your network and you'd be able to play using your broadband connection. That add-on was a bit hard. That add-on's a bit harder to find. I don't currently have one in the collection. I do want one, but yeah, currently don't have one in the collection because they are quite expensive to get hold of now. For me, the games on the Sega Dreamcast are absolutely brilliant. It was definitely, I think, a worthy competitor to both the PlayStation and the Xbox. But once again, I just think by that point, Sega had lost so much faith from the gaming community that was the main reason why it failed. Obviously, starting off with the Mega CD, the 32X, then the way they mismanaged the Sega Saturn, I think gamers just felt that they'd been too burnt by Sega, and all the goodwill that Sega built up through the Mega Drive years had pretty much evaporated by that point. For me, as I've said, I do love the Dreamcast. It was an underappreciated console, and it was so far ahead of its time. Yeah, it is just a shame that it didn't sell better, and that it was Sega's swan song. For me, that is probably the most devastating part. I grew up with Sega. I still to this day class myself as a Sega fanboy. So yeah, for me, it's a bittersweet console. But I do think that Sega went out on a high with this one. It was a well-designed console, and it had some absolutely superb games on it. I remember the first time ever playing Resident Evil Code Veronica over at my friend's house on his Dreamcast, playing Crazy Taxi. It was, yeah, it just had so many amazing games released for it. For me, do you know what? I originally had this as an A. I'm going to put it as an S. I think it deserves the S. It was so far ahead of its time and so underappreciated. I think, yeah, I think S is probably an appropriate ranking for the Dreamcast. So that is all of the Sega consoles. And yeah, just looking at the list, I'm happy with how everything sits. Still umming and ahhing about that Pico, but yeah, I am going to leave it in position B. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of that? Would you put any consoles higher, lower? Let me know in the comments what you think of my rankings for all of the Sega consoles. And yeah, with that, that is going to wrap up today's video. But before you head off, if you did enjoy the video, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're not already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to be kept up to date when I upload new videos. And yeah, with that said, thank you so much for joining me today. Really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.